Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Following the conclusion of yesterday's NBA draft, I'm going through every team in the NBA and looking at how the draft affected them. This video is about the Washington Wizards, who got not Rui. Rui was their first round pick last year. Instead, they got a different guy whose first name ends with an I and last name ends with an A, Deni Avdija. Rui Hashimura, Deni Avdija, kind of some similarities in their names as well as similarities in their games. So, looks like the Wizards have a type. They also nailed their second round pick at 53 of getting Cassius Winston. I think that was one of the better second rounders. Great value for them at 53, and I think he's going to end up being a solid backup point guard in the NBA. So, very good deal for the Wizards there. And, before I talk about the Wizards anymore, I just want to remind you all to leave a like and subscribe. Appreciate all the support I've been getting lately. Hope to see it continue. And without further ado, let's talk about some Washington Wizards basketball. They, in my opinion, drafted the right guy. You could have made a case for Tyrese Halliburton going here, but I think that Halliburton and Avdija are very similar a very similar level of players. And I think that Avdija probably fits this roster a bit better, so I'm a fan. There is some overlap with Rui Hashimura and his game, but his ability as a playmaking wing who can be a really good team defender just really fits with this roster. He can create some shots for Bradley Beal and John Wall. He's going to probably be a guy who's like running the second team for a lot of the time. I'm not sure if he'll start over Troy Bone at the small forward position or not, but I think that bringing him off the bench would probably be in their best interest, and they actually have a chance to build a really solid second team with Ish Smith at the point guard, Deni Avdija on the wing, and Mo Wagner as a solid big man with Davis Bertans coming in also on the wing if they are able to retain him in free agency, which we'll talk about a bit later. But I really like this pick for the Wizards. I'm going to be interested to see the kind of offensive sets they can run. Maybe we get to see some Bradley Beal in Klay Thompson type off the ball movement scenarios, which would be very fun to watch. I think that Deni can kind of be like an Andre Iguodala type for this team. I've compared him to Draymond Green in the past. I think less impactful Draymond Green is a pretty good indicator of what Deni Avdija's ceiling is in the NBA, and I think that is probably a top 30 to 35 player, especially since I am a believer in Deni's shot, and I think at some point he's going to end up shooting it better than Draymond ever did. I think he can get to that 36%-ish mark from three, and if he does that, he's going to be a very, very lethal player on the offensive end. I think that there's a chance that he's like a 18 8 and 8 type player, 18 8 and 7, and that's super valuable on the wing, especially with the 9th pick. I think this is a fantastic pick, and I think that Tommy Shepard should have run to the podium to draft Deni Avdija here at 9. I think that this was the right guy for them, and if I'm Tommy Shepard, like I said, I'm super happy with this one, and I'm excited to see what Scott Brooks can do with this roster moving forward. Like I said before, I'm also a huge fan of them taking Cassius Winston with their second round pick. I'm a big, big believer in Winston. I think that he's going to be a guy who can handle the ball, is a good playmaker, and can shoot it from three. And what more do you need from a guy as your backup point guard? I also think that he's a smart enough team defender that he might be able to cover up for a bit of his athleticism deficiencies on that end of the floor. So overall, I think that you just added a really cheap guy to play the backup point guard position for you for years to come. Obviously, they already have Ish Smith, so maybe he doesn't get minutes this year and he just functions as a third point guard. Maybe he's even on a two-way contract where he's able to develop a bit in the G League. But I really like this pick. I had Winston at 34 on my personal big board. I'm pretty sure it was 34. So obviously getting him 19 picks below that is excellent for the Wizards, and I really, really like what they did in this draft. They're one of the few teams that I would actually give like an A+ to. I'm not sure that Deni is going to help them all that much next season because I do think that it's going to take some time for him to grow, but if he can work on that shot and get it to a super high level, then there's a chance that he can become the third star that this team really needed. Maybe not quite star, but definitely above average role player for you who's going to be a really, really good starter. John Wall and Bradley Beal are obviously the backcourt, and they're one of the better backcourts in the entire NBA. So they didn't necessarily need another guy that likes to have the ball in his hands, but Deni also doesn't need a whole lot of shots, which allows him to coincide well with those two. Moving forward, I think that there's a chance that we could see a lot of fun sets where you've got Deni like as a pick and roll or a pick and pop screener for a guy like John Wall, and then Wall passes it over to him, and we see Thomas Bryant get into some motion with Deni. You can have Bradley Beal spotting up, and I'm not trying to resort Bradley Beal to a spot up shooter. He's excellent in the isolation, but I think that Deni's ability as a playmaker and shot creator can just make Bradley all that more lethal on the offensive end of the floor. This team now has like a rotation that I think is really respectable, and as of right now, I would say they're the favorite to get that 8 seed in the East. However, there's one key. They have to bring back Davis Bertans. I think that that's probably the only real move that they're going to be able to make this offseason due to how close they are to the salary cap. So giving Davis Bertans a deal, use his bird rights to keep him around, is something they got to do. If they weren't going to re-sign him, I think they probably would have traded him at the trade deadline. So now that they didn't make that move, retaining Davis is going to be the key of the offseason for this team. He's invaluable to them as a floor spacer. Not much besides that, but he can shoot it as well as almost anyone else on the planet. I think he shot it like 45%, and he took some ridiculous long-range bombs last year. Contested long-range bombs from, Dame Lillard, Steph Curry range. So this guy is very impressive to me. He's going to shoot the lights out for you, and for that reason, I'd be willing to fork over a contract that is pretty costly. I think a 4-year, $56 million deal is where I would start with that if I were the Wizards. If I were Davis, I'd probably start at 4 years, $80 million. So they'd probably meet somewhere in the middle around 4 years, $70 million. That's a good deal for both sides, in my opinion, because Bertans is going to be really valuable to them. They want to make the playoffs. They want to continue to get better and try to win around Bradley Beal, and Bertans is that type of win-now player. If they can continue to add depth and continue to have their young players show growth, guys like Deni Avdija, Rui Hachimura, Troy Brown Jr., Thomas Bryant, Mo Wagner, Cassius Winston, Jerome Robinson, Isaac Bonga, if all those guys can improve, then this is going to be a team that has solid depth and a star in Bradley Beal that they're building around. So I think that the Wizards put themselves on the right trajectory today, and they made some really good picks. Outside of Bertans, I think that they could add some help on the wing in free agency, but they're not going to have much more than a minimum or maybe like a biannual exception type deal to give out. Glenn Robinson III would be a guy I would really be targeting if I were them, as a guy who can put the ball in the basket on the offensive end and can also provide some defensive versatility. Otherwise, someone like Shaq Harrison could make a lot of sense as a guy who's going to be cheap. You could probably get him for the minimum, and if not the minimum, a bit more than that. He can fill a role as a guy who can come off your bench and be a defensive stopper. And if his three-point shot continues to improve, there's a chance that you just picked up a young guy with potential to be a really, really good 3-and-D guard. So those are a couple names for them to target in free agency, but really the key is to bring back Davis Bertans. To summarize this all, I'm a big fan of what the Wizards did yesterday. Deni was one of the bigger steals of the draft, and I think getting him at 9 was terrific value for them. I had him 6th on my personal big board, so obviously that was a nice guy for the Wizards to grab. Cassius Winston was another perfect value pick, in my opinion, and I think that the Wizards had one of the better drafts out of any team in the NBA. Next year, if I were to project an over-under for their win total, I would probably say 40 wins. I think that this team has a chance to really contend for the playoffs in the Eastern Conference, and I could see them maybe not just being the 8 seed, but even jumping into competing with teams like the 76ers and the Pacers for a top 6 seed. This is a really fun team. I'm excited to see what they look like next year. I think Deni is going to be a fun player to watch, and adding him to a team that already had a lot of fun guys like John Wall, Bradley Beal, and Davis Bertans can only make them more exciting. So this is a team that I'll definitely be tuning into on League Pass quite a bit, and I'm excited to see where they go from here. Let me know in the comment section down below what you think. Do you love these picks for the Wizards as much as I do? Leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed. I hope that you did, and I really appreciate it if you would do those things to support me. I think that's going to be it for me. Ladies and gentlemen, I will see you all again very soon.